Good. Technology is really out to get me this week, isn't it? Good morning. How the devil are you all doing this fine day? I hope you're all well. Before we begin, I was going to say a double apology, a triple apology, because the light wasn't working properly. Monday's show was a complete disaster. I mean, we've had some bad shows in the past, but Monday's was just terrible. Turns out the lovely people at Virgin Media were actually testing local connections. So while I had loads of download speed, I had no upload speed whatsoever. To make it even more annoying, the whole thing was resolved about half an hour after I abandoned the show. So sorry once again. And I said this is a double apology, and it is. I was never planning to actually broadcast yesterday as I was out and about. But because of the snarl up on Monday, I had no chance to remind everyone that I wasn't going to be here. So to those of you that turned up yesterday, expected to see my happy smiling face, this one, I can only apologise once again. I'm going to say a very quick good morning to a few people that have just joined us. Good morning to Chris Ford, to Mark Whiting, and Gary Muirhead has just said, is this Monday's show take two? Yes. Yes, there's a few tweaks. There is a few tweaks, but there was a few bits that I really wanted to share with you. So, yes, it is a repeat of the thing that you never got to see. So I don't suppose that counts as a repeat, really, does it? So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day. And this could tax your brain today a bit. I think the question of the day, so look out for that. And I'm going to get the show on the road. Now, before we get into the meat of the show, I want to say no, not that one. Things just moved up. I want to say good morning to Carolis Jerksatis, possibly. I apologise for having absolutely destroyed your name there, but thank you very much indeed for being here. Don't remember seeing you in the chat before, so you are welcome with some welcome confetti. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let us know where you're watching from. Now, getting back to the actual show in progress. It is Wednesday, the 26th of July, I believe, possibly. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, this will sound familiar to some. Acquiescence Unbecoming, how Demolition is facing the latest threat to its existence with a deafening silence. JCB shows off its hydrogen tech to Grant Shapps MP, who looks suitably confused. And we're mulching with Mazio. Plus, if you thought the dragline was a machine from the past, then think again, and we'll get to all of that in just a second. But first, let us peer back through the mists of time to see what was happening on this day in history. And on this day in 1469, the Wars of the Roses kicked off. Probably a disagreement about football or cricket or something. In 1865, the capital of New Zealand moved from Auckland to Wellington. Who knew? In 1945, the plutonium core of the Fat Man bomb was delivered to the island of Tinian, where it was assembled before being dropped upon the Japanese city of Nagasaki with devastating effect. And I will reiterate, I went to see the movie Oppenheimer over the weekend. Highly recommended. And on this day in 2015, the Tour de France was won by British cyclist Chris Froome. Now, before we get into the real meat of the show, let me remind you of our question of the day. Yeah, I know that's a lot to ask, but what do you put your brains into overdrive and let us know what your earliest memory is. Mine was actually a family holiday to Ireland. I'm reliably informed that I was 4 years old when we went. I have two memories from that holiday. The first was the roof rack falling off my grandfather's old Ford Cortina and strewing my grandmother's smalls across the road. But my second was climbing up on a gate to have a better look at some cows. Now, I grew up in London. Cows were quite unusual for me. So I climbed up on a fence. There was a tiny piece of barbed wire on top of the fence, and I managed to cut myself on it. I've still got a You can't see it, but there's a scar on my arm just to prove it. But what about you? Do you recall your first day at school? Something even earlier? Let us know in the chat. And while you're thinking about that, we'll do this. On Thursday last week, we were among the first to bring you the news that the Community Secretary, Michael Gove, had kicked to the curb plans to demolish and rebuild the Marks and Spencer store on London's Oxford Street. At the time, I said it would likely have far-reaching consequences, and this is one of those times when I rather wish I'd been wrong, but I wasn't. On Thursday last week, we brought you the news that Community Secretary Michael Gove had kicked into touch plans to demolish and rebuild the flagship Marks and Spencer store on London's Oxford Street over embodied carbon concerns. I said at the time that this was potentially a landmark decision and that it could set a precedent for similar schemes up and down the country. In fact, as it turns out, the decision was so significant that BBC Radio 4 featured the story on its PM show on Friday afternoon. Sadly, the days of BBC impartiality and a willingness to show both sides of the argument are long since past. And so, to discuss the matter, they featured just one man, Jack Pringle of the Royal Institute of British Architects.
It is an important decision. Of course, Mr. Gove has hung it both on sustainability and also the proximity to Selfridges, which is a listed building. So it's not just on the sustainability, but nevertheless, I think this is seen as a landmark decision on the sustainability front. The first thing when you have a project of this nature is you have to decide whether there is a case for development. Does the existing building work? Can it be refitted to work, in its current guise in any way at all? And often there's a case for making the building much bigger. There's a need to make the building bigger. We want to densify our cities on sustainability grounds, etc. That can be done in two ways. You can keep the existing structure and extend sometimes, either on the plot or maybe using strengthening foundations and going up. And you can do a calculation over a long period of time how much that reused building is going to use in energy terms, because it's never going to be quite as efficient. That's the calculation you have to do. So beside that first calculation, you have to figure out if we spend all that carbon in demolishing the existing structure and add it to the carbon that a new hyper-efficient building is going to use over a period of time, what's the tipping point? What's the payback period? If it's 5 years, then that's obviously acceptable. If it's 50 years, that's obviously not acceptable. So there are two things that we're missing at the moment. One is an agreed way on how to count the carbon. And the RICS, the surveyors, they've got a proposal, and we're backing that at the RIBA. And the other is, what is an acceptable payback period? Now, the Marks and Spencer published payback period was 11 years. The Inspectorate accepted that, went through a whole number of processes, a number of approvals, and a lot of people thought that was okay. Mr. Gove thinks it's not okay. So the ball is now in play. What is the acceptable payback period?
Now, as I said, I'm past the point of expecting the BBC or any other part of the mainstream media to present a balanced view. But given the magnitude of the decision, its public profile, and its potential impact upon the future of the UK demolition industry, should we not have had a response from the powers that be in the demolition sector by now? This is an issue that is gaining traction and momentum, and it's doing so across the media and in the nation's corridors of power. And yet, as an industry, we continue to stand idly by while the demolition industry is undermined, while its environmental credentials are overlooked, and while valuable projects are rejected, apparently on a whim. We will be revisiting that subject at the end of the show, only this time I'll be doing so with my tongue planted firmly in my cheek. And speaking of tongue planted firmly in the cheek, Tristan Mays, Mr. Crane himself. Good morning, Mark. Hope you're all good. Did I hear you mention a dragline on the show today? You did. Pretty sure it's a crane. It is. Are you now admitting cranes are awesome? No, I am not. Cranes, as we have previously discussed, are not awesome. All they do is pick stuff up and put it down. That's all they do. It's not clever. It's not big. They just picky uppy, putty downy type of things. And our friend Graham Footy Williams has just joined us, and Glenn Johnston is in the house as well. So Good of you to join us, gentlemen. Let me roll one of these because I've got more to show you. And from one MP looking to get themselves into the newspapers by claiming their sustainability credentials to another. This time it's Secretary of State for the Department of Energy Security, Grant Shapps, who has paid a visit to JCB to learn more about the potential for hydrogen power. And this is what he got to see.
I'm here today at JCB in Staffordshire, and JCB operate in two really fundamentally quite difficult areas to decarbonise. Of course, they're in construction and in agriculture. But I have to say, they're making that decarbonisation programme look easy, and I've been very impressed with what I've seen today. They've got a range of small battery electric diggers which work in certain environments, particularly in cities and where battery electric is more accessible. But for the really big stuff, like this digger behind me that I've just driven, they're using hydrogen combustion. Now, that is a unique prospect. Well, I've never driven one of these before, but I imagine it must be very similar. Let's go up a gear to driving a regular one. Being indicated to drive in here. I'll just step down to second. Fabulous. I've challenged JCB by the middle of next year, by 2024, to be operating some of these on our roads and in construction sites. And JCB tell me they'll be happy to try and achieve that objective. And good luck to you.
JCB, always looking for a better way.
I can't help thinking that JCB are doing, and a number of other equipment manufacturers as well, actually, are doing far more in the field of energy security than Mr. Shapps and his team. Then again, maybe it's because I actually like JCB. And I'm going to point something out to you now, and please forgive me if this forever ruins the evening news for you. It seems that MPs like Mr. Shapps, and more specifically Rishi Sunak, must go to some sort of MP equivalent of stage school, because they all have a thing that they do. You saw that somebody was showing Mr. Shapps around a sign there, and he had to point at it. Watch Rishi Sunak whenever he is with another dignitary, be it the King of England or Joe Biden or something like that, or somebody else. He will walk into a building knowing that there are cameras around, and he will point at something, because that apparently makes for a good photograph. Watch out for it. You heard it here first. Now, some of this. Yes, once again, the mention of the word hydrogen has triggered conversation. Gary Muirhead, who really should be reapplying his suntan lotion right now, but instead he's in the chat. Morning, Gary. Hope you're enjoying Tenerife. We still have to get the availability and cost of hydrogen down. Yes, we do. Graham Footy Williams says, hydrogen, yes, they can stick electricity where the sun don't shine. Sounds awfully uncomfortable. Steve Williamson, I wonder when the time will come that sites will have hydrogen tanks on site. All good buying one, but where do you get the tank from, and where would you purchase the hydrogen? All things that need to be overcome still. I think hydrogen will overtake electricity in construction, says Dan Cullen. Totally agree. BP sell hydrogen, according to Ken Hatcher. I'll go back to one of the things that Tim Burnhope of JCB said when I went up to see those very same machines up at the JCB quarry. this notion of taking the fuel to the machine rather than the machine to the fuel. It's all very well, excuse me, it's all very well BP actually selling hydrogen, but until we can actually get it delivered to site and rammed up the rear end of a machine, doesn't really help, does it? Yes, that's all good. They're all good at pointing a finger, something else rather than themselves. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that distracts you from the fact that they're really, really terrible at their job. Shell has the right to all hydrogen, all of it. Like, is that really true? Now, we've done the FOSS thing, haven't we? So mention the term dragline. And yes, it is a crane before we go any further. Mention the term dragline to plant men of a certain age, and they will grow all misty-eyed and reminisce about RB crawler cranes that they knew, loved, and lost. But before you think crawler cranes are a thing of the past, you might like to think again. I'm actually off to see Senebogen in about a month or so. Obviously, my primary interest will be in their demolition excavators, but I will be taking a closer look at those cranes, purely to make Tristan Mays really, really jealous. He won't be that jealous, actually. Crane Hub filmed a Senebogen dragline a while back in the London Brickworks near Peterborough. Could sit and watch work all day. Is that available over on your YouTube channel? I'd like to know. Let me know, Tristan, if you can put the link in the chat, because I'm sure people would like to see that. Now, going back to the chat, Gary Muirhead, who is a traitor to his race. Tenerife is amazing. Mark, thanks. Just sitting in front of a full English breakfast. See, the Scots. You can't export your breakfast, can you? That's the problem. I wonder what safety we will have in store for the safe fueling of hydrogen. Certainly the system that I saw up at JCB, fuel Bowser, it all looks safe and secure, but it's not here yet, and you would have to think that the health and safety people will be all over that like a bad suit. They look good, them draglines, but damn, what a boring job. Oh, I don't know. The splashing would keep me entertained for quite some time, I think. Al Grierson says that I really need to get footage of one of those at some point. I think there is only one in the country. That would be Luxembourg, obviously. You would need fireproof overalls and a face mask on. Would you really? That's interesting. This is a hashtag that will never catch on. Tristan May says, cranes are awesome. Nah. That's something else. And wow, he knows how to handle that machine. Yeah, I'd like to have a go on it. I'd like to have a go on a dragline. I don't want to be lifting stuff up. That's for the girls. Now, we need one of these.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Now, do we have a problem? Do we have a problem? Because one of the things I was about to play you has apparently vanished. Now, that is a concern. Bear with me 1 second, just make sure I haven't misplaced it. I'll tell you what, I'll do that another day. So, that's strange. So I'll tell you what, rather than playing you what I was about to play you, let me play you this instead. And if this is the one that I think it is, yes, if this is the one I think it is, this is a high-flying case machine.
The new Case 921F XR machines come with the XR loader boom linkage, providing extra reach and more hinge pin height, and are patented with a case cooling cube, improved for extreme conditions. These cooling cubes ensure a constant flow of clean and fresh air to each radiator, enabling higher efficiency in a dusty applications. Ideal for color cement plant. Colossus has the largest cement terminal on the Indian Ocean, holding a total capacity of 60,000 tons and supplying cement to most of the large and medium construction companies, as well as to an assortment of hardware stores scattered over Mauritius Island.
Very glad I had something on standby. I will. The one I was about to show you was a Mazio attachment. I'll save that for tomorrow once I've found exactly what it is that I've done with it. Had a couple of questions. One in particular that came through from Steve Williamson. Do you use a double screen PC setup? I don't at the moment. Long story, but the plan is now to have a vertical format screen alongside, because the chat is very busy, the scripts have got very, very detailed and everything else. So yes, that will be the plan for the future, but not at the moment. Electronic machines, maybe electronic machines be more unreliable, they get older, and expensive batteries. Totally agree with that. Our friend Peter, sick note, McKenna is in the hospital at the moment, but he's here anyway. Good to see you. Oh, it's a Vacra bulk ship. Yes, okay. So Algerson says, what is it pulling? And now we know what it's pulling. Graham says, I'm a petrol head. Airways, can't help it having motorbikes in my blood, and the smell of Castrol when we should. I'll come back to that in just a second. Earliest memory. This is a good one. Milking a cow into my cereal. Now, I've just read that. I'd like to know how that works. Do you bring the cow into the kitchen, or do you take your bowl of cereal out into the field? We need more details. Jim Turner says there's a reason that the cranes aren't exciting, but drags are. Cranes are all about steady, slow lifts, and you throw a dragline bucket where you want to dig. Yes, I agree 100%. Gary Muirhead says, my earliest memories helping my granddad with some DIY. He was awesome at turning his hand to anything. Granddads were, weren't they? I'm sure some of you are aware, I did a podcast about the lost art of tinkering. When I was growing up, my dad used to spend his Sunday mornings going and tinkering with the car, spark plugs and stuff. Who does that now? Unless you're a real enthusiast, who does that now? Peter McKenna says, nothing like a smoky old diesel engine in the morning, both the sight, sound, and smell. Yes, I think there are a few environmentalists that might argue with that. Can't see an overpressure system for the cab. I did not notice that because I was trying to find the video that I was trying to play you. Okay. So in answer to the question of how you get milk direct from cow, how did we get here? Milk from cow direct into cereal bowl. It's the bowl goes into the milking parlor. Who knew? So warm, and yes, I've done that thing. And it's once you get over the fact that it's come straight out of an animal and it's got hair in it. At least my batch did have. Yeah, not bad at all. Now. Where are we? Yes, I tell you what, let me roll the gripe intro and then we'll get on with that. Satire. That's what we're doing today. It's described as the use of humour, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticise people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics and other topical issues. We don't do much in the way of satire around here. We tend to do sarcasm. Hopefully, this is a mix of the two. And now for something completely different. I've been working on this for quite some time now. This is my impression of the UK demolition industry responding to major issues that have impacted the sector in recent years. Now, I need to lose the glasses and the microphone just so you get the full facial expressions. I hope you enjoy it. I know, uncanny, right? So, how did we do? Was that satire or was that just pure sarcasm? I'd love to get your take on that. Now, you'll know that within that video, I did mention the CMA investigation. There's a big news story over on demolitionnews.com about that very thing today. Obviously, the fallout is continuing. We understand that Erith has agreed to pay. They've paid half their fine. They're going to pay the rest of their fine in instalments. That's going to take another 4 years. They were the biggest of the fines at 17.6 million. We also know that Cantillon is changing its name to Morris Rowe, hopefully to remove some of the taint of the CMA investigation. And on top of all of that, you can now read the full 176-page CMA report. And I have. I've read it so you don't have to. And honestly, if you go over to demolitionnews.com, it's the lead story at the moment and probably will be for the rest of the day. Click on the link. You can go and read it yourself. Get past all of the intro and the legal bit and then get into the meat of what was actually discussed. And there's talk about people carrying around notebooks with so-and-so demolition contractor owes us so much and we owe so-and-so demolition contractor that much. There's also things like, there's one bit in there about McGee Demolition, who basically asked for other demolition contractors to take a step back because they didn't have enough work on and they needed a job desperately and were willing to pay for the privilege. There is perhaps not surprisingly, given the fact that we are talking about illegal activity here, not only was there illegal activity and collusion, but there was also duplicity and backbiting and backstabbing among those that were actually doing it, which maybe is no great surprise. Go and have a look. Honestly, it could take up your entire evening, but you'll thank me for it. It really is like something out of an Agatha Christie story. Anyway, getting back to the main crux of things, that was my gripe of the day. I'd love to hear yours. What is it that grinds your gears, gets your goat, and generally butters your proverbial parsnips? The daily gripe therapy session will return, and I'm just grateful that all our videos are played today. That pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around for that, then please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. But if you do have the time and the inclination, stick around, because the Craic will begin right after this final word from our key show sponsor. I am going to go back to the very beginning of the chat, but my sarcasm satire take, Peter McKenna, is that a silent movie? Bits of it most certainly were silent. Now, let's get us some music playing. What should we go for today? Anybody feeling funky, or should we go with... That's it. Let's go with one of these. Yeah, that'll do us in the background. Right, back to... Let's go back to the very beginning of the chat. First off the mark was Dan Cullen. Good morning, Mr. Cullen. Hope you're fit and well, my friend. Steve Williamson is in the house, taking a break from being a star of all things social media to join us this morning. Morning, Steve. Hope you're fit and well up in Bonnie, Scotland. Gary Muirhead, who should be, well, no, shouldn't be. He is from Bonnie, Scotland, but he's currently lounging about, probably covered in tomato ketchup around about this point, while he is in Tenerife enjoying his full English breakfast. You will be disowned by your Scottish colleagues by the time you get home, and I apologise for that. Dan Cullen, let's get this show on the road today. Are we due an extra today? No. No, you're not. So all I've done was replay the one, as Gary Muirhead has said, I've gone for take two. Obviously had to update the what happened on this day in history and stuff, and for some reason the Mazio attachments video I was planning to bring you vanished. The bizarre thing, just to let you know, obviously if you were here on Monday, the whole thing fell apart. Couldn't play videos because I had no upload speed and everything else. By the time I got it back again, this microphone here is set on the as default on this show. So as soon as the show starts, this microphone kicks in. There's a light up there that does the same thing. For some reason, all of that had gone. So when I went back in and tried to, I was going to record the show and put it out at 6 o'clock. None of that would work. Then half an hour later, technology just said, no, okay, we've had our little temper tantrum. We're all back, and it all seems to be working fine. Mark Whiting is in the house. Morning, Mark. Glad you didn't get to see the Monday morning debacle. It was a disaster. Chris Ford is in the house and says, good morning, everyone. Morning, Chris. And our friend Carolis, who is a demolition supervisor, as it turned out. I went and checked him out on LinkedIn while we've been talking. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you very much indeed for being here. My question of the day was that, what is your earliest memory? And genuinely, I grew up in Battersea in South London, and we went as a family. So it was me, my mum, my dad, my nan and my granddad. My dad's mum and dad went to Ireland for a week, I think it was, back when I was about 4 years old. So my dad drove from Battersea to Bermondsey, left our car there, and then we all piled into my grandfather's car, big Ford Cortina with the big wings on the back. This is a long while ago, obviously. Loaded all the suitcases onto the roof rack, drove out up the road, and the roof rack fell off. I don't remember where the roof rack came from, and I don't remember the car having a roof rack before or after the holiday. So I think this was a last-minute assembly job because there were 5 people in a 4-seat car. I think that was the problem. No car seats back in those days. I just went with the flow. So yes, my grandmother's clothes strewn all over the road, and my dad and my granddad running around in the early hours of the morning trying to pick them up. It's one of my earliest memories. Jim Turner is in the house. Morning, Jim. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Just to let you guys know, The reason I wasn't here yesterday, I'm still working with this publishing company, talking to them about how I do what it is that I do on this show and on social media. And I was telling them about the audience yesterday, and a lot of you guys came up in conversation, like Ken Hatcher, like Jim Turner, like Gary Muirhead, and like Peter McKenna, and Dan Cullen, and so on. Mentioned a whole lot of you, because I was trying to get across the community feel of what we've created here, because they, like me, they are in magazine journalism, and they spent years and years and years sending out magazines to people that don't say a word. I said, the difference is I do this and I get instant feedback, and I know these people by name, I know some of them by sight, and I know them by characteristics. We all know that Ken Hatcher loves a sprocket. We all know that Jim Turner likes a banging tune, and so on down the line. They found it hard to understand, but I think I've convinced them. So look out for that. Ken Hatcher says, good morning. Good Lord, that's a mixed bag of weather. Speaking of which, just to remind you all, I'm off to Sicily on Monday morning. I'm going to be away for a week. And according to the news this morning, Sicily is not on fire. It is very hot to the point where I have renamed it Sicily. But apparently, because of demand and what have you, the entire passport system has collapsed in Sicily. So I may well be spending my first day, possibly even 2 days, at the airport trying to get put through passport control. So keep me in your thoughts while I'm suffering that, would you? Question of the day. My earliest memory, this is Dan Cullen. My earliest memory was walking out to school, 4 years old, walking home 4 miles to go out on tractor with my dad as I'd seen him pass the school. 4 feels like a cut-off to me. I know there are people that claim to remember being a baby, or possibly even spookier, remember being in the womb. I don't believe that for a moment. But 4 does seem to be the cutoff. And I wonder if that is, I mean, you just mentioned that was school. I wonder if school is such a momentous change in a young person's life that it kind of embeds itself into your head. I remember starting school, again 4 years old, in South London. And I also remember trying to escape from school as well at about 5 years old. That's a whole other story. Al Grierson is in the house. And I'm going to point out, I was only escaping school because I didn't understand education at the time, not because teachers are bad. And I'm saying that because Al Grierson, as we all know, is a teacher. Morning, Al. All the way from Luxembourg. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, gang, he says. Dan Cullen says, question of the day again. Never liked school, prefer to be outdoors. See, now, the weird thing is, I absolutely loved school. I really, really did like school. Enjoyed some of the educational part, the bits that I was good at, English and literature and all that kind of stuff. So any excuse to write a story, I was always up for that. And looking back, it was fairly obvious which way my career was going to go, but I didn't see it at the time. But I also, it's where all my friends were. I got to play football on a daily basis. I got to play for the school football team. That's where I met my first girlfriend, my second, third. Brilliant. Loved school. Absolutely loved it. Question of the day. I can't remember my first memory. Good answer, Ken. Well done. There's some mornings going around. There we are. Tristan Mays. Hope you're all good. Did I hear you mention a dragline on the show? It is a crane. I agree it's a crane, but it's a much more interesting crane, in my opinion. Graham Williams is in the house as well, as is Glenn Johnston. Morning, Glenn. Morning, all running late today. Hey, at least you're running. That's the important thing. If you were here on Monday morning, you'll know I most certainly was. Well, no, that's not true. I was running. The show itself most definitely was not. Peter McKenna, morning all. Be with you shortly, still in hospital. And then there's lots of talk about hydrogen, which I think we have covered. Let's have a look. There we are. There is Gary Muirhead. Tenerife is amazing, Mark. Thanks. Just sitting in front of a full English breakfast. Yummy. Funnily enough, I follow Gary on Facebook. Interesting to watch somebody else's holiday, particularly when you know them. So yes, I'm watching with interest, Gary. It looks like you're having a fantastic time. And you actually managed to find the Ibrox bar, did you? The Ibrox, for those of you that know football, Ibrox, you can fill in the gaps yourself. I wonder what safety have in store for the fueling of hydrogen. There is so much to come with that hydrogen thing. where is it going to come from? How are we going to get it from place to place? How do we store it? How do we refuel using it, and so on down the line? And I agree with all the comments in the chat there that say that hydrogen is going to be better and more beneficial than electric. I agree 100%. But man alive, there's a lot of questions still remaining to be answered. So I think the notion, I think Grant Shapps was saying about challenging JCB. Who the hell is he to challenge JCB to have those machines on site in a year? Okay, but that's a challenge. I have every confidence that JCB can build those machines and make them work, but actually making them commercially available, i.e. they can sell them to customers and customers can use them because they now have ready access to hydrogen. I still think we've got a long way to go on that. I've been talking to someone well up the ladder, and he says that hydrogen not hit the market running. Is Shell holding some patent for it to be available in quantities, says Dan Cullen. Interesting times. Yeah, well, listen. I would do virtually anything that required me to be by water. My happy place is by a river or by a lake or something similar. So even if I'm dropping a bucket from height into the water and causing untold headaches for the fish below, I could live with that. But I take your point. Al Grissom, I really need to get some footage of one of these at some point. I think there is only one in the country. I had nothing to do with draglines or whatever, but I was talking to somebody yesterday. I've already mentioned I'm off to the World Rally Championships. I can't remember exactly when it is, but I was talking to somebody yesterday about that very thing. And it turns out I'm going to be in Germany on the weekend before the Stein Expo show kicks off. Stein Expo is the German equivalent of Hillhead. And I think Al Grissom is going to Stein Expo, but because I've got another commitment, I need to do the World Rallycross Championships and then get myself back again. So it looks like I won't be going to Stein Expo unless there's a real big change. So Al, make sure you film lots while you're there and share it with us. I'll be more than happy to give you a slot on the show to share what you've seen. We've covered that one. Cranehub.net filmed a Centerbogan dragline a while back at the London Brickworks near Peterborough. Could sit and watch one work all day. Yeah, if you are into cranes, I'm not, but I fully appreciate that some people are. If you'd like to go and check out cranehub.net or go over to YouTube and find find Tristan May's Crane Hub YouTube channel. It's very good. He makes a very, very good film, trust me. Dan Cullen says that's something else. He knows how to handle that machine. He does. As I said, this is the hashtag that will never catch on. At least it won't around here. Cranes are awesome. No, they're not. I'd take hydrogen all the way compared to electric machines. You're not alone either. Yeah, do you use a double screen in the PC setup? So I'm on a widescreen. Just to let you know, and I've got my camera, so I'm looking at me. I can see my setup, so I can see my sign behind me, obviously see my face. I can see the comments there and everything else. Down, it's this side to me, but that side to you. I've got all your comments in a column, and then over to the other side, I've got my notes and my script for the day. The plan is to extend it with a vertical screen at some point. Just trying to find one that won't absolutely screw up the look of the studio, basically. The vertical ones do tend to look, they're quite big, and I'm not sure I want that. And I have tried putting my laptop to one side and doing the comments from that. It's all a bit unwieldy and a bit untidy. So yeah, I'm looking into that. But watch this space. Maybe I'll do a studio tour someday. It's a box room. It won't take long. Electronic machines are be more unreliable as they get older and expensive batteries. Well, I mean, I've already mentioned the fact that we have question marks over hydrogen. I think we have question marks over electric as well. What is the real working time? What is the real charging time? How long do the batteries last? What do you do with the batteries after they've expired? And so on down the line. Lots and lots of questions still unanswered. Peter McKenna is back from hospital and he's waving. Good morning. Waving back. There we are. Peter McKenna milking a cow into his cereal. That's going to take some beating. I thought, oddly, it only just occurred to me, oddly, my earliest memory is cow-related. Peter McKenna's earliest memory is also cow-related. It's a cow thing. There's a bovine theme to the day that I never intended. Let's have a look. Jim Turner says, there's a reason cranes aren't exciting, but draglines are. Cranes are all about steady, slow lifts. You throw a dragline bucket to where you want to dig. Yeah, and the splash. I'm a bit... I understand they don't always work in the water. I do know what a dragline is all about, but that one, that just works for me, I'm afraid. Nothing like a smoky old diesel engine, both the sight and the sound and the smell. Is that like an apocalypse now? Oh, I love the smell of diesel in the morning. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Can't see an overpressure system in the cab. I didn't watch it closely enough. I put it in... I won't bore you, but I've got a list of the show content, and then below that I've got a list of other stuff that I can fall back upon. That was in the list of stuff I can fall back upon. So I didn't have a chance to look at it properly. I didn't have a chance to actually go through and script it. And to make matters worse, I wasn't, at the time I pressed the play button, I wasn't even entirely sure it was going to be in English. So I dodged a bullet with that one. Question of the day. We've already mentioned this, but Gary Muirhead, earliest memory, helping his granddad with some DIY. He was awesome at turning his hand to anything. Is that a dying breed? And I know we've got some people here that can wield a spanner and what have you, but it does feel like that's a lost art, isn't it? Even things like around the house. I have personally, I cringe at actually admitting this, I have never personally hung a sheet of wallpaper. I've helped my dad do it, and when I've needed it doing around my house, I used to help my mate, who was a builder and was good at that sort of stuff, do it. And then I got to the point where I pay other people to do it. I've literally never, ever hung a sheet of wallpaper. Kind of questioning my own masculinity right about now. Peter McKenna says, took the bowl into the milking parlour. That makes perfect sense. Chris Ford said, question of the day, seeing light at the end of the tunnel, spent the rest of my life trying to get back into a tunnel. Well done. Question of the day, one of my earliest memories was watching and smelling a big red O&K digger and a yellow Hanomag wheel loader working in a meadow. Has left a lasting impression on me. It is interesting. As I said, with my school career, and I have told you this story before, so I won't bore you with it again. But, if I had at high school a double English, like a double length English lesson, that made for a good day as far as I was concerned. Any excuse to write stories and what have you. And I did English literature, which I half enjoyed and half resented. It took me about 20 years to revisit Shakespeare after I'd left school, because having been forced to read it, it turned me off, and it was only when I chose to do it under my own steam that I realised actually they had a point. They are classics for a reason, and that's why they've been around for as long as they have. So I partly enjoyed that, but it is interesting how your some of those early memories, like Al Grierson, saw an O&K digger and a Hanomag wheel loader, and whatever this is. I mean, he's but a boy, but 20, 30, possibly even 40 years later, that stuck with him, and it's still his passion to this day. Steve Williamson, question of the day. When I was little, I remember losing my glasses in a field that was harvested. After many, many months later, they were bedding cows with the bales, and there was my glasses fully intact. It is. I'll quickly bore you with two tales on that. I was at a very, very, very raucous gig at the Brixton Academy some years ago, and my glasses got knocked off my head. And I mean, we are talking about hundreds and hundreds of people surging towards the stage. There was a mosh pit, there's jumping up and down and all that kind of thing. And I managed to find and recover my glasses completely untouched. And the other one, and I may have told you this before, you may recall back in the very early 90s, there was some sort of health scare with Perrier water. Anyone remembers that? Fizzy Perrier water. There was some health scare. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I was working in an office that was attached to a landfill site, and that landfill site was given the job of disposing of all of the tainted bottles of Perrier. The job was worth so much to the company in question, they actually used the funding used the fee for it to go out and buy a brand new crusher, big track mounted crusher. So wheel loader, picking up pallet loads of Perrier water, tipping them into the crusher. Crusher would then crush them, no great surprise, and they would fall off the conveyor at the end from about 7-8 foot in the air and land on the ground. The same wheel loader would then pick them up and dump them into the back of a dump truck. Dump truck would then take them down to the landfill where they were dumped in the ground. They were then covered and then compacted by a big, I think it was like an 821 Caterpillar landfill compactor. So these bottles had been dropped from height, crushed, dropped from height, carried in a dump truck, buried and compacted. A few years later, we used that same landfill, which had now been reclaimed, to do some test digging with some Kubota mini excavators. And we dug up dozens of bottles of Perrier that were 100% intact. Literally, they'd gone through crusher, compacted, absolutely fine. Peter McKenna, question of the day. When I was little, no, we've done that one. That was, because I pressed the wrong button. As a 12-year-old, once the old ball through a Darwin, Lancashire town centre. People knew the ball as ferocious and deadly when it was in the field. Couldn't believe that a kid was walking it. I didn't know you were from a farming background, Peter. Cow's milk straight from a cow is far better than from a carton. Yeah, I'm not sure I can do that. I'm not sure I could do that. I mean, I've done it, but I'm not sure. Give me a nice cold glass of Cravendale. Sorry, other milk brands. I just got a preference. Let's have a look. Some people hate hospital. I used to, but Totty watching has changed all that. Fair enough. Well, lads, what is the crack today? Says Dan Cullen. I think the main crack is this. I think there was a feeling in demolition circles that when the fines of nearly £60 million were handed down to the 10 demolition companies back in March, I think a lot of people thought that would be the end of it. And not even close. Not even close. We've since had 4 director bans, although I think a couple of people are fighting it. I know Keltbray and Squibb are appealing the level of fines that they were both handed. Obviously, we've mentioned the fact that Erith have now got another 4 years to pay back their 17.6 million, or the half of it they haven't paid back. Cantillon has changed its name to Morris Row. It was obviously bought out by Morris Row a few years ago, but it is now chosen to rename itself, which I'm sure is at least partly to get rid of the taint of the CMA investigation. And as I say, the CMA report, if you do get a chance, as I say, 176 pages is quite daunting, but the first 30 or 40 pages basically explains how how the investigation was carried out and legal explanations and stuff. Get past all of that, because each of the projects upon which collusion was proved, there is detailed. And as I say, I wasn't kidding. This is absolutely true. There is details of people with notebooks basically keeping score of who owed them what and what they owed whom. Unbelievable. And it even goes as far as retaining the language used between the various colluding companies, like Gissa call in the morning and stuff like that. I mean, the CMA have done a remarkable job to get all of this together, and no great surprise. Having seen this, no great surprise that it took 4 years to bring it to fruition. Do you think the CMA fines may take down some of the demolition companies because they can't afford to pay them? That was a fear, and certainly there was a question mark over one or two initially. But I get the impression that most of them have either paid, or they've got some sort of payment plan in place that will allow them to pay it over a course of months or possibly even years. Is it possible that one or two could still go? Yeah, I guess it is possible. I think, to my mind, where the real fault lies. I don't honestly believe that the fines will take down many, if any. But bearing in mind they now have that black mark against their name, so if you're going to bid for example, local authority work, where I know things like collusion are checked very, very seriously, and things like in the nuclear industry, the petrochemical industry, all of that is completely frowned upon. It's frowned upon everywhere, but they are very strict about it. So I think there will be some companies, they will take a hit on having to pay back the fine, and then they could quite possibly take another hit because they're not making it onto tender lists because of their past history. Could be an interesting time. City be having Scottish breakfast instead of an English breakfast. Not sure. Should play the radio version of War of the Worlds in the background. Yeah, do you know, there's I wish we didn't I wish we didn't have to worry about copyright issues. The music you can hear in the background is obviously copyright free, and it's fairly naff, but I would love to be able to play some proper songs. And I don't know quite how I arrived upon it. Are there any Cure fans in the audience? I was just in a 1980s music rabbit hole last night on YouTube, and I came across a song that I bought. It would have been around about 1989, 1990. I bought the Cure album Disintegration, and the opening track is called Plain Song, Plainsong, Plain Song. And I heard it last night for the first time in probably 30 years. Good God, it's brilliant. It honestly, do yourselves a favour. When the show's over, go onto YouTube, look up The Cure Plain Song. It's a masterpiece, really. I'm all good. Went from one dye job in Derbyshire to another in London, and it's a mess. No wonder these companies go bust, leaving the work they do. Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're dead right. I turned on at 10:30 Monday to find the stable door open and the horse had bolted. The horse had keeled over and died, actually. Yeah, it was an absolute disaster, and I can only apologise. Let's have a look. Ford Cortina, great car. Yeah, I've got very fond memories of the Ford Cortina. And my dad's early cars was a Volkswagen Beetle, which I then emulated about 23 years later. My first car was a Volkswagen Beetle, purely because my dad had one. The sun is cracking the flags here in Preston again after being the wettest place in the UK over the weekend with 100 millimetres of rain in 24 hours. It always rains in Preston though, doesn't it? You guys should be used to that sort of thing. What about a crane with a wrecking ball? I like to watch them. I do like to watch them. That is one that I wouldn't like to do though, because I don't think I'd have the cojones for that. And I'm fairly sure I would end up losing the wrecking ball. It happens. Trust me. There's YouTube videos about it. Steve Williamson, I wonder if there's a company out there building hydrogen tanks for upcoming hydrogen machines that will start rolling out of production. Yeah, you'd have to think there will be. I mean, obviously JCB have built their own delivery system. So a mobile tanker to actually deliver hydrogen to site. So they're on the ball. Others will have to follow, I would guess. Craig Williams from CSW Groundworks is in the house. Another of the... I do need to get you along on one of our Content Creators Club evenings, Craig, which I will be doing when I get back from my hollybobs, because you're doing some great video work. I think you should be part of the game. Gary Muirhead, question of the day. I also remember being on the school grounds during the summer holidays when there was construction work going on, helping out. Was then I realised that was the industry I wanted to be in. I wonder how old you were at that time, Gary, because it really does seem to be, you have to, if you are exposed to it. And that's one of the things that I always think about exhibitions like Plant Works. Why can't we be like, I saw people wheeling push chairs and walking toddlers around Samota. Why can't we be like that here in the UK? And expose very, very young children, 4, 5, 6 years old, to diggers, get them inspired. Because as Gary has just said, he's done that as a school child. And what is he doing? He's only about 21. What is he doing 15 years later? He's doing precisely that. Publishers, plant manufacturers, bucket attachment or whatever need a broad spectrum of people like us that will use their products and give them an honest answer. No good at asking employees, as they will likely agree with their superiors, so they don't rock the boat. It's very true. Funny enough, I was telling people, I was telling the publishing company just yesterday about the experience of doing a launch alongside JCB, and we did it one evening. Show lasted a couple of hours. When it was all over and done with, one of the JCB directors actually phoned me up and he said, I wish we'd had that audience before we actually launched the machines, because you guys, and a lot of you were present for that, you guys were coming up with answers and suggestions that they hadn't even thought of, and that's the mighty JCB. So yes, I totally agree with you, Jim. My dad did all the wallpaper in the house, but one day my mum let me have a go. 5 sheets later and 3 rolls, my dad was blazing. I'd put them on the wrong way around, never touched the stuff again. I think I just heard my wife go out, but she was backing me up on this. The first house that she and I bought 3 years before we got married, yes, we lived in sin, damn me if you will. We bought a house over in Carshalton. I don't know, 5-6 miles away from where I'm sat right now. And it was fine, you know, look 2 up, 2 down. We were perfectly happy there. But the bedroom was a little bit shabby. So my wife went off to work one day. So I got my mate Bruce round, and I'd already had a word with her about what wallpaper she wanted. And there was a very specific Laura Ashley wallpaper. This was the 80s. This was acceptable. Very chintzy and naff, but she liked it. So we went out, got the wallpaper, got back, did the entire room. So when she got home from work, there's me and Bruce sat there, beer in hand, chatting away. And she said, what have you been up to? I said, well, let me show you. Led her up to the bedroom, opened the door, and she went, oh, that's lovely. Why did you hang it upside down? It had flowers, and they were droopy flowers. Only ours were not droopy. Stayed like that for another 3 years. And then we moved out. Let's have a look. Where can I find Al Grierson's content? You can find it going to Construction Channel Luxembourg on YouTube's, and it's very good. While you're there, subscribe. I find it interesting watching all these various creators and the way that they do stuff. I personally, I like a bit of razzmatazz, I like a bit of music, I like a bit of transition and stuff. Al Grierson shows equipment, but some really good equipment, you know, big on Volvo, big on Liebherr and stuff like that, in the raw. So here's a machine, I'm going to film it doing its thing. He does it really well. So go and have a look, and while you're there, hit the subscribe button. The milk has better quality, no preservatives or man-made stuff in it. Pity I can't drink it anymore. Is that because you're a vegan or because you have some sort of lactose intolerance? Don't know. Peter McKenna, Cravendale, bottled on the same line as regular milk. Always been a big con. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. And to be perfectly honest, I was, funnily enough, I've already mentioned it, when I was up in Eskilstuna with Volvo, whenever it was, last year sometime, the hotel we were staying in, and I'm sure I mentioned this when I got back, the hotel I was staying in at breakfast had 11 types of milk. Now, I could identify that, you know, there was an almond one and there was an oat one, but the rest were largely cow-based. You know, cow-based, I'm sure that's a thing. And because it was all in Swedish, it was a punt. So I just, oh, well, that looks okay. Poured it on my cornflakes. It was fine. Following day, they were in a different order. Couldn't remember what the one that I had looked like. Tried another one, exactly the same. Couldn't tell the difference. And I know some of our Scandinavian friends do like a bit of sour milk and stuff like that, but I couldn't tell the difference. 11 varieties of milk, couldn't tell them apart. You can digest, be like Bear Grylls and turn back to eating what your body was made for. Eating meat, he says. What I meant to say was, shouldn't he be eating Scottish breakfast? Whoever's eating that breakfast shouldn't be eating a Scottish breakfast. Yeah, the trouble is, I do think that I don't tend to look for it while I'm away, but I would imagine the full English has been exported, whereas the full Scottish possibly hasn't, which is a shame. They're missing out. There we are. I couldn't, or I can't, because I due to lactose intolerance. It was a good guess. Didn't know you didn't have real feet. Lactose intolerance. You have to read between the lines of Peter. Lactose-free milk is made of regular cow's milk. Where it differs has had the enzyme lactose added, which breaks down the lactose in milk, or lactase added, which breaks down the lactose in milk, making it both easier to digest and helping avoid the symptoms associated with lactose intolerance, such as stomach pain and nausea, and the deliciousness of cornflakes. Still occasionally, even in my 50s, still occasionally have a hankering for a glass of milk, and it's love it. Remember my first job at 12 was carrying slate up a 3-story house, and loved it, says Dan Cullen. Gary Muirhead, quite rightly, is going back to the pool. Enjoy. Have a splash for me, Gary, while you're there. Enjoy the rest of your day. My stuff, Construction Channel Luxembourg on YouTube or Facebook. Yeah, there we are. Just as well I remembered that. The likes of JCB need real contractors having a hand in their machine development. Can't ever be replicated in a test quarry. You're right, and I also think about the nature of operators. We've all got, I say we, I'm not one of them, but I think all operators have got certain little foibles and quirks. Some like a bit more leg room, some like a bit more head room, some like a bit more arm room, some need somewhere to put their phones, some I'll be interested about where the air vents are to keep them cool or keep them warm and stuff like that. And I think if you could get a cross-section of those guys, almost, and I hate to say design by committee, but design by committee of people that really know their shit, I think that would be a fantastic idea. Better still, give it to a groundworks company, a farmer to test, and then they'll get an ever better product for the masses. All good points, I would say. Question of the day, Dan Cullen. I remember being in sheds, working on old tractor engines and cars, and I remember driving tractor and doing my first jobs at 14 on the main roads, then stuck to small back roads, loved every minute cutting grass and ploughing fields for local farmers. Yeah, it does stay with you, doesn't it? And I'm sure it's not just a case of vocations either. I haven't been this year so far, but I am intending to at some point in the not too distant future. I'm looking forward to going fishing, and that was, I went fishing probably the first time when I was about 2 years old, sat on my dad's lap, and I followed him up and down the country while he was fishing matches. He taught me how to fish, but I as I say, he was a very keen and very good match angler as well. So I spent years and years watching my dad fish, and now it's part of my makeup. And there's nothing I can do about it, and I wouldn't want to do anything about it. It's part of my makeup now, and I am a fisherman. Not right now, but given the chance, put me by some water, and I'm a happy bunny. Right, people, that's an hour. And it all worked. Well, apart from the fact that I lost the Mazio video, I will go and retrieve it. I'll probably play that for you tomorrow. So people, go and have a fantastic day. Please don't forget, I'm going to be on holiday next week, so there'll be no show Monday to Friday. In fact, Monday to Monday, I go in the early hours of Monday morning, and I get back Monday afternoon the following week. So I'll be back on the Tuesday, whatever the day that is. I think it's about the 9th of August. Hopefully a few of you will be taking your holidays and coincide, so you won't miss me too much. I'll see if I can put something together, possibly for the Wednesday, just to keep you vaguely entertained, but I'm running out of time and I haven't done it yet, so you may have a week without me, and for that I apologise, or maybe that's a blessing. I don't know. I'll leave you to decide that. I'll be back tomorrow for all right, Wednesday. So tomorrow will be the penultimate show before my hollybobs. If you'd like to join us, I'd love to have you here. Till then, everybody, have a fantastic day. Thanks for all your input. I've now got to go and cook up another question of the day. So while you go and sun yourself and work hard, I'll be doing that. I'll speak to you all very, very soon. All the best.